Hey folks, it's Rick again. So today I'm replacing the transmission fan on my GC2610. I'm not sure when it broke. I bought this tractor used 2 or 3 years ago, and I've been following some threads on Facebook as far as buying skid plates and replacing the fan. And I never saw the fan on my tractor. I've never been completely under it. I've been under it to do different things, but I never slid way under it. And I never saw the fan on my tractor, so I wasn't sure if the conversations on the fans were related to the newer 1700 GC series tractors or not. So I finally slid under my tractor the other day, and I found the remains of my fan. So when I slid underneath, I looked up and I saw the white here, and I thought maybe it was some kind of plumber's tape or plastic shield or something around the drive shaft. And then I noticed the broken fins here. So I realized that I was supposed to have a fan on my transmission. Again, I don't know when it broke. I've never seen it. So my guess is it was probably broken before I bought the tractor. So anyway, I ordered the new fan. It came in yesterday. So I've been working at this for a while, trying to figure out how to get the fan in there. I wanted to show you the fan and show you step by step what I was doing to replace it, but it's difficult to put in place. So I finally, after about a half an hour of messing around with it, I finally got it to pop into place. So I'm not removing it to show you how I put it in there, but I'll take you underneath the tractor and I'll show you best I can how I put the fan into place. It's a tricky, difficult process, but it is barely possible. So I'll take you underneath, show you what I did, and then I'll show you what I did up on top to facilitate the removal of this piece and the installation of the new fan. All right, so we're under the tractor. So there, best I can show you, is the new fan. So here's the transmission. I'm working under tight spaces here, so here's my, I'll back up a little bit, see if I can pull out a little bit here. We'll zoom out. So we're under the tractor. There's the oil filter, the transmission, and the fan's tucked up in there. So whenever I climbed underneath here, I never got close enough to see the hub of the fan. I was always back here somewhere and just I couldn't see the blades. So it wasn't until I really climbed underneath it that I saw the white hub up there. So in order to get this fan in, I tried different ways. I tried going up. You got these 3 crossbars here running from frame member to frame member, and those are what are in the way. So the first thing you have to do is pull the drive shaft off. Mine was kind of rusted in place. Here's the drive shaft, and there's one bolt on there. I think it was a 12 millimeter. I forget now, 12 or 14 millimeter bolt that holds that on. So I pulled that off, but the front end of the shaft wouldn't budge. And underneath here is this plate. It's welded right to the frame. You can see the welds there. Welded right to the frame. It goes right up underneath the engine here. So there's no way to get to the front end of the drive shaft from underneath the tractor. So you have to go from above, and I'll show you that in a minute. So I managed to go up above, and I had to spray some WD-40 on the spline on the front end of the drive shaft and then pry it loose. I finally got it loose and popped the drive shaft off here. Gave me access to the fan. There are 2 bolts you can see right there. All right, so you see the holes there. There are 2 of those holes across from each other. And it seemed like the fan tended to drop into, well, the spline tended to drop into those holes, and then it just doesn't work. And then you get caught in that hole. You got to pull the thing back out, pull the fan back out, and start again. So what I did is I tried lining it up so the spline was right here behind in the plastic, behind that plastic part of the hub, so it wouldn't drop into the hole. And then I pried the fins over the bar and crossbar here, and managed to get it so it had to really push hard, gently but hard, gently but firmly, pressed it enough so that the spline finally dropped into the center hole where it belongs. So it was a lot of trial and error, trying to get this thing to line up properly, but that's how I found how to do it. It was really tight coming in over here and getting everything to line up properly. But it is possible. Just be careful you don't break your fins. You do have to bend them and twist them. So what I did, I can't remember exactly how I did it, but this fin here, I did first and started at the, I forget which end. I think I started at the weaker end, the far end over there, right here, and then bent it this way and kept prying it. It's a little more flexible that way. Kept prying it until it finally popped over the cross member. And I think I had to do the second one as well a little bit, get that to pop over, and then everything dropped into place. So again, those are 12mm bolts, and I come in from over here to get to those. Now the fun is going to be getting the drive shaft back on, and I'm hoping that I sprayed enough WD-40 at the other end to really loosen it up so it slides properly. I'll put some grease on the spline there and some grease inside the drive shaft to help slide it on. But we'll go on top and I'll show you what I did to get to the drive shaft. All right, so I had to come back. I lost an important part of the video, and that's showing how I got the fan installed. I had everything else, but that part for some reason didn't come through. So what I did with the fan is I brought it up over the crossbars here from the front end of the tractor. Slid it up over the crossbars and then brought it up into here. And then it's hard to show and hard to do here, but so then I took the upper blades, called the upper blades, and tucked them up inside the housing, the body here. Tucked them up under the red body so that it was at an angle kind of like this, and then the lower blades here were rusting up against this cross member, and that's where the problem is, and that's where you had to tuck those in. And once I did that, that's when it popped into place, and that's how I explain what I did as far as getting the spline to drop into the center hole. So that's the process. Bring the fan up over the cross members here, bring it back through, tuck it up under the body first, and then tuck these blades over the cross member. Okay, so we're above the tractor, and what I did is I pulled off the screen here under the dashboard. There's 4, maybe 6 screws that hold that on. So I pulled that, got that out of the way, and then I've got this screen here that goes inside here. It slides in this way. There's 4 bolts there, I think maybe 12mm, 10 or 12mm bolts to hold that in. They're a little tricky to get out. It's kind of a tight space, so you need either a short ratchet or a small wrench to get in there and get enough room to turn those bolts. And they don't seem to loosen up too quickly, so it takes a lot of small turns to get those out. But once you get that out, you can see your drive shaft. I'm working in bright daylight here, so I'm hoping you can see it. There it is. So the end splined end of the drive shaft was pretty dry and a little bit of rust on it, so I sprayed it and sprayed it and sprayed it with WD-40 till it finally loosened up. I was able to pry from underneath the other end of the drive shaft. I pried on that gently, and this end slid in far enough to get the drive shaft off the spline at the back end. So I've been spraying this some more, letting it soak, in hopes that it'll slide out easily, and then I can reattach it at the other end. Now, I've had people tell me to remove the floor pan here, and it would be easier to work on. And that might give me a little more room to work on that drive shaft and slide it back and forth. But I think I might have just enough room to work on it this way. So I'm going to continue working on it the way it is. I really don't want to pull this floor pan because there's a whole bunch of bolts underneath the rubber mats there. It's going to take a while just to get that floor pan off. So I'll try to convince the drive shaft to cooperate and slide back on, and hopefully with enough WD-40 at the front end and enough grease at the back end, it'll cooperate and slide back on. And then I just have to put the one bolt back on the back end of the drive shaft, and I'm done. Okay, so I've got it all back together. The drive shaft cooperated with a little persuasion, but it cooperated. So I sprayed a few more times. I sprayed the front end of the drive shaft with some WD-40. Got it loosened up pretty well, and then I greased up the transmission ends, greased up the spline on the transmission, and then greased up the drive shaft itself. So if you look between the two cross members there, you can see the bolt that holds the drive shaft on. There's a little what do you call, a little recess in the spline, so you gotta line that up, and then that bolt threads through the drive shaft and then clears the little recess, and that's where it's held in. It's just that one bolt. That's a 12mm bolt that holds the drive shaft on. I'll show you what I did to clean the spline and the inner end of the drive shaft. I took my spark plug cleaner. So I used the end of the spark plug cleaner here with the wire brushes in it. I used that on the transmission spline. Just slid that on, slid it back and forth, and got that cleaned off. And then I took the cover off. Let's see if I can get that done. Hold on. All right, so then I took this end and I ran that inside the female end of the drive shaft and cleaned the splines with that. One thing I don't like that I noticed under there is that the universal joints are welded right to the drive shaft, and there are no grease fittings. So they seem to be loose, they seem to be okay, so I put it all back in, put everything back together. But I would imagine at some point, like they're doing with cars now, you don't just grease up the U-joints or replace those, you replace the whole drive shaft. I guess it costs them an extra quarter to put the grease fittings in, and they don't want to do that. So let's start it up and see how it works. There she goes. All right, so that seemed to work well. Everything's back together underneath. So now it's time to put things back together on top here. So this screen right here is going to go back inside here. Now what I did was, So I'm working with a camera here that's in the bright sun, so I can't really see too well. But what I did is I cleaned this all out in here. It was full of grass and debris. So I cleaned that all out real good. Cleaned up the drive shaft. And then I cleaned up this screen. I took a little brush here and cleaned this up. Got a lot of the dirt and gunk that was all built up on that. Took that all off. Now this recess right here that you see, that's going to go right here. That goes around these cables. So you take this part just the way it sets, take this just the way it's setting, and slide it in there, and then there's the 4 bolts, these 10mm bolts. They go in here, and if you can see it, right in here. Again, I can't really see anything on my screen, but that goes in there, and then I take my screen there, and that goes back on here. There's 4 Phillips head screws. This screw here, and then screw there. Those can stay in. You slide the screen in behind those, and then you have the 2 up here, and they're here somewhere. Hopefully I didn't lose them. And then you screw those right in, and that's it. Okay, so she's done. Everything seems to be working properly, so let's hope for the best. When I discovered that my fan was shot, I went to YouTube looking for videos. Couldn't find a YouTube or how-to video anywhere. So that's why I'm putting out this video, in hopes that it may help somebody in the future when they have the same problem. It's 2:30 now. I started this around 9:30, but it didn't really take me 5 hours. I made a couple of stops, took a lunch break, and then at one point my grandson wanted to go pick blueberries in our shrubs over here, so that took some time. I would think it was probably about 3.5 hours total, and that's with very little knowledge on how to do the repair. So there was a lot of trial by error, a lot of guessing and hemming and hawing. It's a time-consuming job. It's not real easy. The difficult parts are getting the drive shaft out of the way and putting the new fan in, as I showed on the video. So hopefully this helps somebody in the future, and thanks for watching.